45 years, 0 name changes, new offices, more staff, improved technology to better serve you. Education, services, investments. Think real estate, think Marshall Reddick. Brokerage, property management, private lending, creating financial independence through real estate since 1979.
Okay, everyone. Thank you for logging on to our presentation this evening. I'm here with Carlson, and tonight we have a very hot topic that we're very excited to present to you, and that is long-term versus short-term rentals. All right, a little bit about myself. My name is Taso, and I have been a licensed realtor for a little over 6 years now in the state of California. I received my bachelor's degree from Cal State University Long Beach in business administration. I have 2 years of direct property management experience where I spent time coordinating maintenance, leasing properties, and really working on all aspects of property management in general. And it was between single family residences to 30 units. Some fun hobbies I have is that I'm a student pilot, a Husky owner, and I love to play basketball. I try to make it out at least 2 to 3 times a week. I have completed real estate transactions in California, Texas, and Tennessee, and I am invested in our mortgage fund. Getting some skippage today. So the topics that we're going to be covering today are just advisor introductions, 12 differences between long-term and short-term rentals, long-term and short-term financial breakdowns and bottom line examples, qualities to look for in a property manager, and our Marshall Reddick property rating ebook. What we expect from you guys as attendees is that we hope you guys will learn something from the topics we're going over, and please feel free to take notes. If at any time during the webinar you have a question, please feel free to type it in the chat and we'll make sure to have it answered for you. If any questions come up that you'd like some more in-depth conversation on, please feel free to write them down and we can circle back in a consultation. Please also be ready to write down any links that come up during the presentation, and always remember that a recording of this presentation along with slides will be emailed to you guys 24 hours within its completion here. Okay, so some of you may be familiar with Marshall Reddick, and for others it may be your first time hearing about us. So we're a full service real estate firm, and we have 4 divisions within the company. The first division is our real estate brokerage. We help people buy and sell their primary homes, as well as buy and sell investment property. Nationwide, we did around 600 transactions last year, and 90% of the investment transactions we also currently manage. So this brings us to our second division, the property management. We take care of everything for the landlord, from leasing to maintenance, renovations, rent collections, and much more, so that the landlord only needs to collect a rent check every month. The third division is our private lending. Sometimes when you can't qualify for conventional financing, you need private financing. Marshall Reddick provides non-owner occupied real estate loans to borrowers doing fix and flips, new construction, and purchasing investment property. Our fourth division is our mortgage investing. The same way you can own real estate and collect checks, you can own mortgages and collect mortgage payments. So I personally invest in the mortgage fund, and I collect a quarterly distribution. So here is our Marshall Reddick footprint. I always like to look at this map. So we're broadcasting live from Orange County, California, in our Newport Beach office. We have an office up in Los Angeles, one in Riverside. Moving over to Texas, we have our San Antonio office, our New Braunfels office, and our Austin office. All these offices are connected by the I-35 freeway. And then our newly founded office, our newest office here at Marshall Reddick, is in the city of Houston. Moving over to Tennessee, we have our Nashville and our Clarksville office. And then last but not least, our Florida Cape Coral office. Okay, and here are the people who are behind all the magic. These are pictures that were taken before our last Christmas party in December. On the top left, we have our New Braunfels office, that big blue sign you can see from the I-35 freeway. Moving over to the top right, we have our San Antonio team. The bottom left is going to be our Florida Cape Coral office. Here in the middle is our Newport Beach, Orange County office. And then the bottom right is our Florida office. Very cool. And with all that, I'm going to pass it over to Cam Carlson.
Thanks, Taso. I appreciate a little bit of background here on Marshall Reddick. So a little about me. I'm also a licensed realtor here in Orange County, and I got my bachelor's of business admin from Vanguard University in Costa Mesa. So both local, born and raised here as well. And then I have a background in real estate accounting, as well as loan underwriting and property management at Marshall Reddick Real Estate. So I had the privilege of spending a couple of years here at Marshall Reddick, just getting to know each division of the company before going over into more of the management real estate brokerage side. So I've done real estate transactions in 9 different states here with Marshall Reddick. I also own real estate, so I own real estate here in Orange County, as well as, just like Taso, I invest in our Marshall Reddick Mortgage Fund and also collect quarterly distributions that I choose to reinvest. So diving into our first topic is we're going to talk about the 12 biggest differences between long-term and short-term rentals. First is that when you have a long-term rental, your tenants are going to actually provide the furniture. So they bring their own furniture into that rental, and then they're responsible for the upkeep. Whereas when you have a short-term rental, if it's not already furnished, you're going to have to buy furniture, and that's going to cost anywhere between 20 to 40 grand, depending on what furniture you buy, the size of the home, and similar criteria. And then you're responsible for maintaining that. So if a couch breaks, or a table breaks, or a chair breaks, or even silverware or small items like that, you're responsible for replacing them. And it's kind of hard to bill that back to renters, especially when it comes to long-term wear and tear with the amount of people going through your home, and we'll get into that point later. Second is when you have a long-term rental, the tenants are responsible for utilities. So here at Marshall Reddick, before a tenant even moves into a property, we require them to turn all utilities on in their name and show proof of it. That way the owner is no longer responsible for those utilities. Versus in a short term, you just have to know an expense you're going to keep in mind is you'll be paying for the utilities. So electric, water, gas, anything that goes with the home, trash, and then you're also going to be responsible for internet. And if you want to offer them any services like, Netflix, YouTube TV, Disney Plus, all of those things are paid for by the owner. So that might be anywhere between $300 to $500 a month of expenses that you're going to have to front as the owner of a short-term rental. Third is just the consistency. You know, when you're in a long-term rental, you're going to have a lease agreement of 12 months plus, and you're going to receive the same amount of rent each month. In a majority of large metros that you'll be considering short terms, it's probably going to be about a 50-50 primary residence to renter ratio. So you know there's going to be a demand for long-term renters. Versus when you've got a short-term rental, you just have to be aware that maybe you have a hot season in the summer or winter, depending on your location, but you don't know what your rent's going to be every month or every year. Some years, as we'll see on a map, tank significantly more than other years. So maybe you're going to make the mortgage payment this month, maybe you're not. It's something that you've got to think about and worry about, and so a little more of a headache there. And then last is just the cost of your time here on item number 4. It's pretty much a full-time job having a short-term rental. For anyone here that's had one or stayed at one, I'm sure you know there's a lot of communication that goes in when you're a host, and obviously you're coordinating a significant amount of people coming in and out, making sure that people are taking care of the home's cleaned, all of the furniture and furnishings are there, making sure the soap's there, so on and so forth. Versus with a long-term rental, it's very simple. You kind of just have a tenant in place, they take care of the home, and you maybe hear from them every couple months or hear from your property manager. And to mention, property managers on short-term rentals, very expensive. So a lot of short-term rental owners end up doing it themselves.
Yeah.
And like I mentioned, a quick look at what happens with the market. It may be a good year in 2021 to 2022, but what we saw in 22 to 23 is a significant decline in rental just revenue for short-term rentals. And what we found here at Marshall Reddick is we had a lot of landlords in areas calling us saying, hey, I used to have a short-term rental here. That's how I bought it. It did really well, like in and out of COVID, but now it's just tanked and I want to convert it to a long-term rental. So that's something that's more and more common that we're hearing with oversaturated short-term rental markets and the demand decreasing from where it was. So that's something you got to take in mind. Year over year, maybe a good year, maybe your next year is 35% less revenue, and that's a big change. That's a big change to consider. I'm going to pass it over to Taso to continue these points.
Yeah, absolutely, Cam. And let's take one set of renters, and we'll use the minimal guest basis. So maybe 20 people in a home a year on average in a long-term rental versus 300 plus in and out of the home each year, equating to just substantially more wear and tear in a short-term rental. People are, more ins and outs. Significantly higher liability in short-term rentals due to usage and unfamiliarity of the home. It's treated like a hotel versus their home, and we know how we act when we get in the hotel. AC going up, it's just there's less respect being given. Your home might, or your neighbors might be upset with, more traffic going on. There's a little bit more noise, maybe a little bit more nuisance, parking, etc. in a short-term rental. There is much more accountability for tenants in long-term rentals due to the security deposit and a very lengthy lease contract that is legally enforceable. In short-term rentals, there is no security deposit, no legally binding contract. Oops. Professional property management starts at about 20% for a short-term rental. It starts at 20% versus long-term rentals, you're looking at 7 to 9. Insurance costs are significantly higher in short-term rentals due to the increased liability and having the property proposed as a business versus long-term rentals where renters are often required to have their own insurance. Income taxes are more expensive for short-term rentals versus passive income long-term rentals. And local and city regulations are starting to reduce the number of short-term rentals in each markets, and laws could change at any time, which could impact your short-term rental. So you're at the mercy of the city. Mm-hmm.
And before you move on that one, I just want to kind of touch on that topic. So for some of you that might know more about like Orange County or your short-term rental market where you are, you've probably seen big changes. I know that you used to be able to have Airbnb in Anaheim, Santa Ana, and over time we're just seeing the cities banning them. And the problem is that when you're buying a property and your goal is a short-term rental and you need this amount of income, and all of a sudden you're at the whim of the city and the city says, well, you can no longer do it. And then all of a sudden your investment is now underwater and you've got to figure out what to do. Versus a long-term rental is always going to be there. You're not at the whim of the city, whether or not you can rent your home long-term. That's going to happen when you're looking at short-term.
Yeah, absolutely, Cam.
So let's take a look at an example. This here is because our main office is located in Newport Beach. We're going to talk about one of our Newport Beach examples. So this is a duplex that a owner brought to us in Newport Beach, and their question was, should I use a short-term rental company or should I use you guys, a long-term rental company? What would make more sense? What would bring in more profits? And obviously I had a lot of questions to ask them, but a little bit about the property is one unit is a 4-bed, 4-bath, one unit is a 2-bed, 2-bath, and directly behind this house is a beachfront property. So this is pretty much one of the best ideal cases that you'll think of when it comes to a short-term rental Airbnb style property is a beach property that's like right next to the beach and it's multifamily, high tourist attraction area. So what we did is we took a look at the projections for what it would look like to have this as a short-term rental. We consulted with short-term rental companies and we consulted a lot of websites to get research and data. And what we found is that we're looking at about $19,000 a month is what we were quoted and what we found in comps for the 4-bed, 4-bath, rents versus about $5,000 for the 2-bed, 2-bath, which is a total of about $24,000 a month. The management fee that we saw was 20% management fee, which is about 4,800 per month of that 24,000. But then something really unique is when you're looking at what the potential rent is, you're not considering vacancy. So it's not like you've got a tenant in place that's going to be there every single month. You might have a tenant that's there, or you might have renters there 3 weeks out of the month. You might have renters there 1 week out of the month. And so what we found is, according to Airbnb's data in Newport Beach, the occupancy rate is about 51%. So we're taking that quoted rental price of 24,000 and multiplying that by 51%, because that's the average of how often it'll actually be occupied. And we found that to be around 12,240, which is 51%, meaning obviously your management fee is a little lower, so that's going to be 2,448 based on that $12,000 number. And I'll show you in the next slide here, Air data. So you're welcome to look this up in any market. Just look up Air DNA data for whatever market that is, and they'll give you their data. They'll let you know what the occupancy rate is, average daily rates, things like that. So next is we want to take a look at the maintenance, and we found that it's about 15% of the actual rent for your maintenance expenses. Usually in general, I would say maintenance expense about 8%. Now that you're taking into account that you've got furniture and supplies restocking, that's a lot more money to take into account there. So that ends up being around $1,836 per month. And then you've got utilities. So we were very conservative with the utilities here, putting about $300 a month. Obviously, it's going to be a little higher depending on if you want to offer them, high-speed internet, if you want to offer them any other services, but we want as low as possible. And then Airbnb, just to post on their website, and every website's got their own fee, but it's about 3%. So they take 3% of all of the actual rent you collect. So that's another fee that you have to take into account there. And the total projected profit with the rent coming in of 12,240 minus your expenses, as you'll see on the bottom, was about $7,288 per month. Now keep in mind, we haven't talked about the mortgage, taxes, insurance. This is just based on the data of before any of those fixed expenses come into play.
Mm-hmm.
So what we did next is we said, okay, what if we rented this out as a long-term rental? Obviously, we know the rental amounts are going to be lower, but then again, so are your expenses. So what we said is the rent for the 4-bed, 4-bath is about $8,500 a month, where it's about $5,500 a month for the 2-bed, 2-bath, making it for a total of about $14,000 total each month. And then the management fee is 8%. Actually, Marshall Reddick's management fee is 7%, but once again, being conservative here, some companies are higher than Marshall Reddick's management fee. And then we took a look at the occupancy rate, and we said about 93% occupancy. In this next slide, you'll see here a study done by Colliers, which is one of the biggest, I would say, multifamily firms in Orange County. They actually found in Q2 of this year that the occupancy rate was closer to about 96%, which is great. But once again, we like to give very conservative numbers. So we went with 93%. So your actual rent is not $14,000, it's closer to $13,000. Your actual management fee is about $1,000 a month. Now we took into account, well, when you're leasing a property with a long-term rental, you have to pay a leasing agent to do professional leasing. Our fee is 50% of 1 month's rent to put a tenant in place, and the average tenant stays for about 3 years. So we said if you paid a leasing fee every 3 years, what would that dollar amount be? That's about $195 per month. Once again, we're looking at this on a monthly basis. Next is when you're not leasing the property, you're going to have a renewal fee. This is where you're going to have a full home inspection. You're going to be increasing the rent, and the tenants are going to be signing another 12-month contract to stay in your home. So that's going to be, if we're staying 3 years, 2 out of the 3 years. So that comes out to about $117 per month. And then we're taking a look at an 8% conservative maintenance expense. If you have an older property, you might bring that maintenance expense up, or if you have a lower class property, but we're taking about 8%. So what we found is a total projected profit with a $13,000 rent minus the same expenses that you would see on your short term. Once again, we haven't taken in mortgage, taxes, insurance, is about $10,780 a month. So that's almost $3,000 more than what we were seeing on that short-term rental. And once again, that's numbers here from Colliers. And so the bottom line, and I summed it up in one sentence here, the only time it makes sense to have a short-term rental is if you own a vacation home that you visit multiple times a year and you just want to rent it out while you're not there to supplement your expenses. That's the only time it makes sense, because really what you're looking at is if you have to work 5 times harder to make 5 times the amount of money, but you have 5 times the amount of expenses, does it really make sense, right? And then scalability, it's huge. We mentioned it earlier, but you can own 3 to 4 times the amount of long-term rental real estate using the same amount of time as just having short-term rentals. Just because the amount of time, it's easier, it's scalable. So the goal is you can focus on your income, unless of course short-term rentals is your full-time job. Of course, that's another topic that might make sense for you, but for a majority of investors, that's not. And once again, we're not talking about this from a perspective of, I already have a short-term rental, it's doing well. We're talking about it from the perspective of, I'm buying an investment property. Do I buy it a short-term rental or do I buy a long-term rental? And really, when you're looking at it, buying a short-term rental, it just doesn't work as an investment. So moving on to just property management in general, what are some qualities to look for in a property manager? Well, first you want to take a look at what is their cancellation policy. Am I locked into a 3-year contract? Are they going to charge me a massive fee if I leave early or if they make a mistake? That's something you want to take a look at their agreement. I know for us, we have a 1-year contract. After a year, it just renews on a month-to-month with a 30-day cancellation. And then you want to know what software they're using. Are they using intelligent software to make your life easier? Something where tenants can submit work orders, they can call emergency lines. You can see your income and expense reports on it. We use a software called AppFolio. You're welcome to look it up. It's one of the most powerful softwares out there. Some companies just run off of spreadsheets. So you want to ask those questions. Is there a maintenance conflict of interest? This is a huge point I want to talk about. For us, we don't believe in profiting when you profit. We don't believe in maintenance profiting. So we don't have our own in-house maintenance team where we go, Marshall Reddick is the actual contractor and we profit 10, 15, 20% on every repair. Instead, we outsource all of our maintenance to our very large list of third-party vendors. All these vendors are licensed and insured, and these vendors are going to give you multiple quotes, and you literally see the contractor's name on the letterhead of the estimate. We find that to be the most honest way of doing maintenance. So you're not seeing 3, 4, or 5 maintenance repairs every month and wondering, well, are they just trying to make money for it? That way my management fee was so low. Those are things that you want to take into account. Next is the cost of the service, or the cost versus the service. Obviously, there's always someone out there that will do it for cheaper, right? There's always someone that's going to manage your property for nothing. So you want to see what cost or what service you're looking for. Are you looking for full service management or someone to just make sure your rent check's collected and sent to your bank account, right? So you're going to pay for what you get. And then responsiveness, right? So we want to see, is your company responsive? I know that we have a policy here, and Taso was in our management department, similar to I. Our policy was we pretty much have 24 hours to respond to owners. If we can't give them an exact answer to their question, we're going to let them know when we're getting that answer. But you don't want a company that just ghosts you when they don't want to answer something or when they do something wrong. You want someone that's responsive. And how do you know all of these things? Well, just take a look at online reviews. It's so important to see what other people are saying about the company you're choosing. And take a look at our Zillow page, take a look at our Yelp page, any of our markets. Feel free to look us up, see what other people say. It's important. And even if there's a tenant review, because of course, tenants can be upset for all kinds of reasons. They might be upset for you charging them for a hole that they put in the wall. That's okay. How does the property manager respond to it? Hey, sorry to hear that. This is how the situation went down, something like that. So it's important to see what online reviews say about a company before even picking up the phone to call them. And then I know we briefly mentioned our management philosophy, but I'll kind of just break it down here, very simple. In that sentence that I said earlier, we believe that property managers should only profit and make money when the landlord makes money, and never make money when the landlord loses money. So the two scenarios where that really comes into play is, number one, we don't charge a management fee when the property is vacant. So no fees charged until tenants actually moved in. A couple of things there. One, we're not profiting on a loss. And two is we have an incentive to get a quality renter in your home at a very fast time. Same with your leasing fee, that's not charged until a tenant's in place. So we want to put someone in place quickly. That's meeting our qualifications, of course. And then the second scenario is on maintenance. So we don't upcharge, we don't profit on maintenance, no conflict of interest. We'd rather even just answer the maintenance request and see if we can fix it by troubleshooting on the phone, because that saves us time and you money. So, hey, this is how you reset the garbage disposal. This is how you unclog a toilet. It's crazy amount of times we've gotten that call, but we save repairs, we save our owners money because we're not trying to profit on maintenance. Next is trust. We want to develop strong relationships by valuing trust and building it with transparency, right? So we're not going to go into your home and tell you, yeah, the home's good, it's ready to go, just so we can get on the market and get a tenant in place. If we see that there's something where maybe, you know, even just there's like a water stain, or there's something that we see that's out of place, like we're going to note it, we're going to let you know. We want to do preventative maintenance, right? We're honest about it. We're honest about whatever's going on. We're honest about the tenants. Hey, this is a good quality tenant, you should consider them. Or hey, we don't think this would be. Those are things that are very honest with us. And then last is we're investment-minded managers. So we believe your property is an investment vehicle that must perform as such and be managed as such to achieve the highest return with the least amount of risk possible. And a lot of the staff members at Marsh Reddick either own and or aspire to own real estate. We get it. We understand it. We're not just a property management company. We're a brokerage. I invest in real estate. Taso invests in real estate. A lot of our staff members do as well. And so we come from, it's one of those sayings, eat your own dog food. So that's important to have a management company that is investment focused. Now, what type of properties do we manage? Well, a little bit of everything. So we actually manage single family residents. That's a good portion of our portfolio. A lot of duplexes, condos, townhomes, multifamily dwellings, apartment buildings, up to 20 units. You know, you'll kind of find that Marsh Reddick actually has larger apartment buildings, but you'll have to kind of talk to us about that. We want to see that case by case, see what your goals are there, how we can meet those. And all of these are either unoccupied that we're going to place a tenant in, and we can manage occupied units if, you know, we have lease agreements and ledgers, just proper documentation to know that obviously that tenant is legit. So I'm going to pass it back over to Taso to conclude the presentation for us.
Thank you so much, Cam. So what's next, right? Where do we begin? Where do we start? This is where you would start with an advisor like myself or Cameron. We can go over your criteria and goals so that we can help you guys find solutions and services to meet those goals. Some questions we might start with before narrowing down criteria might be, why do you want to buy an investment property? Why invest in real estate? You can buy stocks, bonds, mutual funds. There are many kinds of investments. So one of the answers might be that you are looking to buy a hard asset to provide value or to park your money. When looking at specific investment criteria, it's important to ask, are you looking for income or long-term wealth? Are you looking for a potentially high cash flowing property that might have more maintenance or vacancy? Or are you looking to break even in a high appreciation market, right? What is your risk tolerance as an investor? When are you looking to retire? Maybe you might have a goal to purchase a property every year until you retire. Can you qualify for financing? How much experience do you have in real estate, right? What can you afford? Some markets might make more sense for investors financially than others, right? So I want to talk about determining property class. I highly recommend that you guys take a look and browse some of the properties that we as advisors handpick for our investors. They're all listed on our website. One thing that you'll notice is that on all of our properties, there will be a property class. And you can see that at the bottom of our slide there, the presentation. So you'll see a scale below that the property classes will start at luxury and then they'll go all the way down to D class. So we as a company focus on A to C. So you will see some luxury, but primarily A and B. Different classes provide different results. So you will see that the higher the property class, the more appreciation. And as the class gets lower, you will see that the cash flow increases, while the appreciation decreases. I think it's always good to go for a little bit of both. Not every market has that. In California, for example, you will see a lot more appreciation where it might be a little bit harder to cash flow. So you will still be making a fantastic return. It just might not be from cash flow, but instead from a long-term appreciation approach, right? On the other hand, in other markets in the country, you might see more availability for cash flow in Texas or Tennessee. Overall, you'll see that high growth areas tend to be higher property class areas, right? So just another look here at our property classes. Okay.
Yeah, and one second, if you want to go back to that slide here.
Yeah, let's look at it.
Just to kind of like break this down in like a very practical example, right? Like how do you determine property classes, right? They're determined based on the median home price in a metropolitan statistical area, but that varies from area to area. So let's just use Orange County, for example. Let's say the median home price is $1 million. So any home that are between $1 million and $1.3 million would be considered an A-class property in Orange County, whereas any homes between $1 million and $800,000 would be a B class, so on and so forth. Now, like I said, it's different in every market because if your median home price is about $300,000, well, obviously, $1 million home is extreme luxury versus a $300,000 home here in Orange County is considered D class, very, very bottom. So that's kind of a little more of like, what does that mean when you're taking a look at these property classes in the practical example?
Yeah, absolutely, Kim. Yeah, so we included a little article here that goes into the step 1, determine the median home price of that metropolitan statistical area, that's MSA. You start with the median home price in that moment, in that specific MSA. It's very important to know what the median home price is and what the market is doing. Free quality data comes out quarterly, while quality monthly data is generally very costly and only makes sense for large investment companies. Okay, some insider advice that this study gives us is that the National Association of Realtors is partnered with Google Maps to create an interactive map showing the latest quarter's median single-family residence home price in each MSA in the United States. So you can go through and look at that, correct?
Yeah, and I saw a question come in real quick. Where on the website can we find information on understanding where the median home prices are? So maybe at the very end, we might be able to share a screen and show you on the website. But essentially, if you guys want to just write this down for a quick second, on our website, if you're on the home page, you'll press the drop down for Education Learn and just go ahead and click into it. On the left side, you'll see filters. One of the filters is calculators. Click on that calculator and you'll see immediately appreciation calculator. If you click on that calculator there, you'll see options where you can hit a drop down and choose any metropolitan statistical area that we have been in or think is important for you to see. Click on that and it'll show you the median home price currently and for the last 40 years. So it gives you the data. You can understand the appreciation trends, you can understand where it's at currently, but that's a place you can see on our website where you can find that. And once again, just like Taso mentioned, this is pulled from the National Association of Realtors.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, and this is another breakdown of our property classes here, just giving the type of demographic that you see within the property classes. So your luxury class, you're going to see your executives, your business owners. Come to your A class, you see your professional white collar. B class, middle manager, young adults. Our C class are typically hourly employees, blue collar. And then D class will be more low income, below the poverty line. So things that matter when determining are price, cost per square foot, school district, and crime rate. Things that don't matter as much that you might think matter are whether it's a house, apartment, or condo, the property's age, property size, and the condition of the property. So again, giving that kind of breakdown. A class, we have the appreciation-based properties kind of towards the high end. B class, we're looking at a little healthy mix of both. And then the C class, you tend to focus more on cash flow. Oops, skipping through today. Maintenance and vacancy. This is super interesting. And when we are presenting these properties to you guys, we kind of go through these conservative estimates on what you're looking at. So how we calculate these we'll go through in the next slides, but 1 to 4 unit properties in the A class range, maintenance wise, we're looking at about 8% a year. Go on to your B class, again, that's kind of that middle ground. We're looking at about 10% maintenance a year. C class in the 13 range, and it goes the same for vacancy. How often is your property vacant? How are we calculating that into the equation on these performers for the properties? 5+ units are a little bit different in that they increase a little bit. So maintenance goes up typically with an A class 5 unit, 10%. B class goes into the 12 range and C class into the 15 range, where you see vacancy typically stays the same. So we'll go into the numbers on these a little bit. So a vacancy example here. I like to apply these in one of 2 ways. So we have a 365-day year at 8% vacancy. You do that multiplication, it comes out to 29.2%. So it kind of ties in with the vacancy here in that during the time of a move out, you might need to do some renovations on your unit or on your property. That could add up to about 29.2% time of those 365 days. That's about a 30-day turn. That is a very conservative figure, right? Vacancy in that same note is still at 8% on these A classes, 10% on these B classes, and 13% on these C classes. We got to fix that, Cameron. I would highly encourage everyone on our webinar today to download our free property rating ebook. And this just gives great description of what we went through here today. It gives details on how to calculate properties and rate them based on our findings and knowledge and experience as property managers and realtors. And that is accessible through our website. So what are other customers saying? Like Cameron mentioned, we at Marshall Reddick love the word transparency. We're extremely transparent and we base our business model off transparency. You can see our reviews online by Googling us or searching us on Yelp. We're very highly rated, and that's because people are very high, they like our service and they rate us as such. So please feel free to give us a look up online. And you can learn more about our services. We have a wide range of education tools and webinars for anyone to access if you want to look into our topics a little bit more deeply. I highly encourage everyone to take a look. If you found tonight's conversation helpful and interesting, you can navigate to our education tab where we have a lot more information. Again, we want to thank you all for attending the webinar this evening. It was an absolute pleasure speaking with you. If you'd like to go more into detail about our conversation, you can reach Cameron or myself at the information that is listed below, and we can schedule an appointment and consultation. We will also be following up with everyone within 24 to 48 hours to get feedback and go through any additional questions you might have. So we'll leave the floor open to any additional questions that might be coming through.
Perfect. And I saw a couple quick questions come in here. Give me 1 second. Someone asked if the recording is going to be sent. Absolutely. So we send the full recording of this presentation as well as a slide deck within 24 hours of the completion here. Another question was, what are your thoughts on vacation rentals, Airbnb, VRBO? Well, I mean, I think if you went back to some of our points, I would say the 12 major points that we talked about, those would help answer that question in the sense of, unless you are living in the home as a second home, like a vacation home, it really doesn't make sense as an investment. From just a strict profit standpoint, you're going to make less money typically when you have an Airbnb versus VRBO. Once you factor in all of your expenses and all the variables that we've talked about previously, it just ends up not producing the same profits. But if you're living in the home, that's the only time where it really makes sense. And another factor there is usually there's just a lot of work associated with them. So scalability is not quite there. It's hard to scale unless you hire a property manager, which once again, that's 20% plus management fee.
Mhm.
Another question came in. How many properties does Marshall Reddick manage? So as a company, we manage about 3,000 properties, and that's going to be broken up over our, over our different markets. A good portion of the properties we manage are actually in Texas in general. I would say Texas is about 1,500. The rest are split up evenly from California to Florida to Tennessee, Kentucky. So that's a little bit of our split as far as property management goes. And feel free to type any additional questions you guys have in the chat there. Any property picks you recommend on the website? We'll follow up with you on that. We can take a look at property picks and a follow up. Thanks for the question, but we'll follow up just to. I think we want to get some of your criteria down first.
I like this one, that just screening requirements for our tenants. At Marshall Reddick, we have a very thorough upfront screening process with our tenants. So our leasing agents take a lot of time actually calling every single inquiry that comes in through either Zillow or rent.com or homes.com. And we have conversations with tenants to make sure we're doing that upfront screening so that we're showing people who are qualified to rent the home. And then someone who is approved will go through a very thorough screening process. We will make sure to run their credit on all three bureaus. We will verify their income and check their bank statements to make sure everything is in line. We run background checks, and then we have a very tight niche move-in process to make sure everything goes accordingly after that. That was a good one. Screening process. Versus, Airbnb, you really don't know who you're dealing with. Okay.
Another question came in. Do you guys manage long-term furnished or unfurnished rentals? That's a great question. I feel like we could have a whole nother whole nother presentation on furnished versus unfurnished. We've tried furnished rentals. It's very difficult to rent furnished rentals when you're not obviously going on the Airbnb side of it, just because, as we mentioned, like one of the early slides, renters actually have their own furniture. So about 95% of long-term renters are looking for an unfurnished home. Maybe obviously appliances can be left, but so when we found with long-term rentals that are furnished, it takes 3, 4, 5 months to even get a tenant in place. And they usually move out after about a year because they're only moving into a furnished rental because maybe their house is getting a renovation or has a problem or something along those lines, and they want to move back in. It doesn't feel like home. They don't have their furniture in place. They typically don't stay for a long time. But that's a great question.
Next one right here, Cam. Do you guys help find the property as well? Absolutely. That brings us to our 4 sections. We're a brokerage, property management company, private lending, and mortgage fund. The first stage of the process for someone who would schedule a consult with us is actually locating a property that meets your criteria. So exactly like we discussed today, what are your goals? When do you look to retire? What's your risk tolerance? Are you looking for cash flow? Are you looking for appreciation? These are all questions that we ask up front in these consults. We get to know, and we cater a search directly to what would benefit your guys' investment strategy. So absolutely, we do help find the property up front. Yes.
Yeah. And before we get in the next question, we'll just go over like a quick example of that. If someone says, hey, my goal is I'm looking to put 30% down. I have about 100 grand total that I want to put into the transaction, and I want 200 cash flow with an average of like a 15% return each year, holding for 15 years, right? That's very specific, but if you've got a market in mind, we could probably hit those numbers. I already know properties in my head, but that's just an example. Or someone says, you know what, I don't care about cash flow. I'm looking for a high appreciation luxury class property, this metropolitan. Perfect. Now we have your criteria in place. That's something that's helpful that we kind of go over in the first call. So another one is, notice most properties listed on the website are sold? Do agents assist with finding off-market LTR deals as well? That's a great question. So one thing first is when you're looking at properties, there's a quick filter. If you filter for only available properties, that helps get rid of a lot of sold inventory. But like I said, we handpick and upload these properties. So it might be an agent in San Antonio uploading a property there. One, it could be an off-market property. So I would say maybe 10, 15%, maybe 20% of properties on our website are off-market deals. As we manage 3,000 properties, you can imagine we probably see a lot of deals come across our plate before anything actually hits the live market. So of course, we find off-market properties. Some properties might be unlisted, some might be builder listings. So at Marshall Reddick, when we sell inventory with the developer, they'll give us the rights to list that community. So you might not find that one there, or a property might be uploaded this week and it's sold in a week from now, but we uploaded it because we thought it was a good investment last week and we haven't had a chance to go take it off. So a lot of times if you kind of refresh to the newest properties for the market or criteria you're looking for, that kind of helps us mitigate that one right there. And I think that's it for questions. Did you see any more come through, Taso?
There's some personal ones that these questions here at the bottom will kind of be definitely catered to a consult question, just as far as like the actual investment strategies. And this is where Cameron and I will take time to schedule one-on-ones with you guys to go through these details in specific. But yeah, other than those new ones that came in at the bottom, I think we're done with questions right now at this time.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. Have a wonderful rest of your night. We look forward to connecting with each and every one of you. Feel free to message us directly. If not, we'll probably follow up. Once again, you'll have a recording of this presentation along with the slide deck sent within the next 24 hours. Have a great night, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.